I'm a leaf in the wind, and this is the weekly nightly news. Today we're going to touch on GMO foods. Actually go a little more in depth than I thought we were going to be able to go. One common misconception I'd like to get out of the way right now is the purpose of food is not to taste good. Purpose of food is sustenance, nutrition, to keep you alive, that sort of thing. If you want to continue eating food that tastes good and have a good chance at a long, healthy life, then right away those are two conflicting goals. I've since taken the initiative myself, and as much as I've been able to, and I continue to do it as I find out new things, I've removed myself from a GMO diet. And I suggest that anyone who can does the same, because this is far beyond terrifying. This is just, food we eat is illegal in other countries. Now, just so we can lay this out right, America, presumed by its citizens to be the greatest country of all, where its people are flourishing in liberties and it's protected by the country and the EPA and the FDA and the USDA, do their job and make sure that you're not gulping down poison at every dinner table meal. Well, other countries that we figure aren't as good as that have outlawed our food because of how dangerous it is. If that doesn't just shatter your brain right now and tell you that what you're putting in your mouth is poison, I don't know if the facts I'm about to present are going to help anymore. So with that being said, let's get started going over some things. The first question we have to ask about this, I guess, is are GMO foods safe? Now, that's the first thing you ask about any food that you're going to eat or put down your throat. Now, when we ask Monsanto if GM crops are safe, they say yes, food derived from authorized, genetically modified crops is as safe as conventional, non-GMO derived food. Now, when they say authorized, we'll get more into that later, but that's because they authorize farmers who buy their seed to use it only for that year, and then this is a big court thing about authorized, but they want to make sure that you're only buying the stuff they authorize. And then they go on to say that it's as safe as conventional non-GM derived food, non-genetically modified derived food. They justify this by going into their spiel, their explanation that the herbicide-tolerant soybeans was the first large acreage planting of GM crops in '96, and it successfully passed the regulatory review. Now, it then says that hundreds of millions of meals containing food from GM crops have been consumed. There has not been a single substantiated instance of illness or harm associated with GM crops. Now, they're not dumb enough to say that their GM crops, these genetically modified crops sprayed with poison and pesticides and injected with them, their own man-made proteins, DNA and RNA, aren't causing severe illness or sickness or harm. They're saying that there's no substantiated cases. And what that means is there's not a case where somebody's gotten sick from GMO foods and they've been able to prove through the company or an organization or an agency like the FDA that should be on top of the ball here to substantiate that case. So right there, they're not saying that it hasn't caused an illness, just that it hasn't caused an illness, and then we haven't gone back and proved that that was the sole cause of the illness. They're not saying it's not poisonous. They're just saying that we haven't proved it's poisonous. They're also saying that millions of meals have been eaten across America with foods derived from GM foods, and nobody's gotten sick. In case you want me to say that a third time, we fed it to you and you were fine, so it's okay. That's the logic here. You ate it, you're alive, it must be okay. Now, a follow-up question is, in analyzing these, because like I said, the one in 1996 for the soybeans passed the regulatory review. So, really, how safe are these? Because in 2003, a French lab actually was analyzing the inserted genes into the in 5 varieties of GM foods. They included the Roundup Ready soybeans, and in each case, the makeup, the genetic sequence, was different than what was described in years earlier from the companies. Now, rather than just assume that the companies, all 5 of them, all 5 recipes were described incorrectly by the companies and all the genetic sequences were off, they decided to first have another lab analyze it. So they sent it to a lab in Brussels, and they confirmed that the sequences were different from what they were originally stated to be. Unfortunately, the sequences discovered in Brussels didn't match the same ones that were found in France, and what this suggests is that the inserted genes, not only are they unstable, but they can change in unpredictable ways over time, and they can rearrange themselves, change their genetic makeup. So there's no way to do a reliable testing for safety, because each one of these, each piece of corn, the genetic material that's been injected into it can modify differently over time. So really all we can say is that one kernel of corn that you put in your mouth right now is safe. That's all we can say. And we can really only say it's safe until it continues to change its genetic sequence. We can only say it's safe for when we analyzed it for that piece of kernel. So obviously, I think we can all start to grow a little concerned here from the unstable gene issue. I mean, that's alarming in itself. So not only do unstable genes make this accurate safety testing completely impossible, but it also might explain some of the different effects that have been reported. For instance, we had 25 farmers spread out across the United States and Canada that say they were certain GM corn varieties cause their pigs to become sterile, have false pregnancies, or give birth to bags of water. So, yeah. A farmer in Germany claimed that a certain variety of GM corn killed 12 of his cows and caused the others to fall sick. And in the Filipinos, living next to a GM cornfield, the cows developed skin irritation, respiratory problems, and intense symptoms and fever. Intestinal symptoms and fevers as well. This also occurred the following year during the same time of the year, during the pollinating season. Apparently, when pollination season came around, the chemicals were getting out into the air and affecting the cows in such a negative way. The chemicals that we put on our food getting into the air is a problem. And that's supposed to make me feel better about putting it in my mouth. Don't forget that you're not breathing different air than these cows. You just don't yet live next to a GM cornfield. But should GMO foods continue to grow, we all will. Because there is no stopping the spread of the genetically modified organisms. It just just like with the cows, pollination comes around, the air will move the chemical from land to land and spread. It's not an isolated incident that has been contained. Furthermore, foods from GMO foods. Now, the difference in testing, how do we get past that? How do we get past the results when we say that the genes are changing, the gene sequences are changing, you can only test one kernel for that time and hope that nothing changes furthermore in the future, or that the other kernels aren't any different. So how do we get around this? How do we get GMO foods onto the shelf in the first place? Well, we use a term called substantially equivalent. What this means is genetically modified foods, genetically modified derived foods versus their conventionally derived counterparts have similar contain similar proteins, levels of nutrition, and so on and so forth. And we do this across the board. The justification here is because one tomato, two organically grown tomatoes, when you take them individually, they might differ a little bit in the level of nutrients inside each individual tomato, but the tomatoes as a whole will be within a normal range. Just like blood pressure or heart rate has, your heart rate has a range. Everybody's heart doesn't beat exactly the same pace. Well, same is true for tomatoes. But what we've done is now we've said that as long as GMO foods, for their proteins, their nutrients, as long as the numbers fall somewhere within the range, or close to the range of an average conventionally grown counterpart, it is assumed safe. And this is from the horse's mouth itself. But for these new crops, there's still no need to assess the safety of DNA and RNA, and introduced proteins will still undergo safety assessments, so long as the introduced protein is determined safe from the GM crops. Food from the GM crops determined to be substantially equivalent is not expected to pose any health risks. Furthermore, it is impossible to design a long-term study safety test in humans. Now, going back over that, they've just said that if it's substantially equivalent, it's assumed safe. It's not expected to pose any health risks. It's not expected to. It's not expected to. If you were to ask me if that food was safe, and I said, I don't expect anything bad to happen if you eat that, is that reassuring? Because usually when you ask a targeted question like that, I would like a yes or no answer. Yes, it's safe. No, it's not. I don't like hearing, I'm not expecting any foul play. I'm not expecting any negative outcomes. I'm not expecting any health risks being posed by the GMO foods. Well, apparently they're not expecting any. They then go on to say it's impossible to do a long-term safety test in humans. Not to mention, Monsanto has not done a long-term safety test in animals either. They've done the 90-day required tests. We'll actually go over the results of a test that was spread out over 2 years using the same type of rats, and actually showed far different results. The rat study here, like I said, it wasn't done over a 90-day period like the Monsanto experiment, but it was done over 2 years, virtually the entire lifespan of the rats, and it was done on the NK603 maize corn, which was developed by the company Monsanto, and it was a peer-reviewed study, the first long-term study done on animals or humans. It was done on rats, and it found a significant increase in not only the size of tumors, but the occurrence of tumors in these rats. Then there was another study done which showed a mortality rate, actually. This one was done by a Russian scientist. Ermakova's research indicated a 55.6 mortality rate in the animals given the genetically modified organism. And both of these studies show, one, similar effects: death, tumors, and death. And two, they should both be enough. I mean, individually, they should be enough to raise alarm worldwide, and they have, just outside of America, because our media is controlled. And if anybody's heard of this, please raise your hand. I'm guessing not that many hands are up right now. I am on YouTube. I can't see you guys. But, yeah, either one of these experiments should be enough to raise a red flag and enough to say to, obviously we can't count on Monsanto to do a legitimate experiment, because they're making billions of dollars. They're on the cusp of advancing genetically modified food, and I mean, they're making breakthroughs, they're making new science, they're making tons of money. Are they gonna stop and assess the safety to the individual? I mean, why would they? This is their payday, this is their paycheck, this is their money coming in. Why would they question it? Why would they ever question it? Why would they want to stop it? Like I said, previously when stuff like this happens, all they got to do is, wait like 15, 20 years, and when people start getting cancer, they come out and say, oh my God, we said that it was assumed safe, we said we didn't expect any health risks, but apparently we were wrong, and the FDA should have had more oversight over us, but they didn't, so we'll start trying to correct this problem, and we'll go ahead and pay out the $50 million in reparations to the families of the people that died from cancer, I mean, those people are outraged, but there's not much they're going to do but settle. And Monsanto, it's a small price for them to settle, and they get to continue on. The only people that actually have to pay here is you, the consumer. And I'm sorry, but in a sense, the blind consumer. It's time we open our fucking eyes about what we eat, what we consume. You're putting this in your body. This is going to stay, actually, in your body potentially forever, because of these unstable genes. We've actually recently found, science has recently found, another one of the selling points for GMO foods, I should mention, was that you don't absorb the DNA or RNA that they put into the plant. That was what they told us when it first came out. Well, science has since shown that your body does, even from plants, from meat, the DNA and the RNA that you take in, the proteins, it is taken into your system, and it does alter and affect your organs. It can turn genes off, it can turn genes on. It manipulates the way your body works. And once this DNA and RNA gets into your body, it has the chance to split and stay there and make new